Good. Okay. Well, then in that case, we can talk as loud as we wish to.
Make sure you speak up.
I will do my best, and I have a feeling you'll let me know if I'm not. Okay. So I'm your state senator, Chris Larson. Hopefully I am. Otherwise, you might not be in the right place. Thank you guys for coming. We do have Representative Sinicki who is on her way. There was a scheduling mix-up with location, but yeah, she'll be here very soon. But we are going to get started. I have a presentation that I could go through. I'm happy to do that, but just given the number of folks who are here, if you came here for a specific topic, I'm happy to make sure that we get to those. So if there's something where you want to make sure we hit a topic, we can do that right now. I can add them to the list, and then I'll make sure over the course of it we'll get to it. If it's a specific question, we're going to save those to the end. So if there's a topic you're hoping to dive into, raise your hand. Yes?
The out of control violence in the city.
The violence, sure. Okay. Anybody else? Everything? All of it? The entire state budget and all of it? Okay. Well, good. All right, we'll dive in, and then this is scheduled to go till 7:30, and I should leave. So if we hit probably 6:40, should give us a ton of time for questions. So, just giving a quick dive in. I don't have a slide for this, but just to kind of give a perspective of where we are. The state goes in 2-year cycles for the budget. So folks who know, we have when we're in an even numbered year, we're in the slower part of the schedule where we're only in for about 3 months. And so we go in January of odd numbered years is when we start, and then we're in for about 15 months before we conclude. The busiest time is the first 6 months of those, and that's where we set the budget, which starts July 1st of odd numbered years, and that goes for the next 2 years. So we're in this strange time, where the legislature is adjourned, where we're not in for anything unless there is a special call, and we don't come back until January of next year. So as I'm talking about things, if you start to notice that we're talking in the past tense, if I'm talking or Representative Sinicki's talking in the past tense about this past session, that's why. Future stuff will be decided by the next legislature. So we can talk about those things, but that kind of assumes a little bit, because we don't know who the governor is going to be. We don't know who's going to be in the legislature, except for half of the Senate. So just to give you a perspective of where we are. And before we dive in any further,
hello, everybody. Nice to see you. I apologize for being late. I don't know what you got into, but
we're almost done.
Oh, good. Good to see everyone.
We just did a quick intro and then asked if there was topics that they wanted to make sure.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm open to anything.
Yeah, I think it seems like they are too so far. So. There was a question about violence in the city, so we're gonna make sure to talk about that. All right, so diving in, just some of the bigger news, just a review over what happened over the last year and change was the COVID recovery. So since the pandemic began in March of 2020, Governor Evers has allocated $4.5 billion. This is money that flowed from the federal government. And it was earmarked when it passed to be distributed by governors individually. And so just how that affected our area, we got $1 billion for small businesses, farmers, tourism, lodging and entertainment industries, $100 million on efforts to expand access to high-speed internet. And then as you can see, 1,900 nonprofits serving communities across the state also got funds, 2,300 local units of government, college campuses, and school districts. What does that look like for us here in Milwaukee County? Here's a little slide with the numbers. Let's just soak that up a little bit. So if you're looking for the grand total, it's in the lower right-hand corner, where we got close to $70 million for Milwaukee County investments allocated. And then if you're looking for even more specific of what that looks like, who here has ever been to the zoo? Okay, good. Most of you. For those of you that haven't, this is your chance to go. The zoo has the exhibit right at the front, the Humboldt penguins. This $3.5 million is going to renovate that because we're in danger of losing the penguins because it was, habitat was falling apart there. So some of the funds went to that, to update that. Another $3.5 million went to the Port of Milwaukee. Has anybody seen the cruise ships hanging out? And although, you know, a cruise definitely seems nice, these help us even if we're not the ones going on the cruise ship because they bring tourism dollars into our community for money being spent. So that's huge to be able to help host, as you can see, 33 port calls, which means 33 different cruise ships coming to our community, with bringing 10,000 people and, of course, bringing their dollars to our community as well. Some of the bigger proposals of the things that I have been pushing and other Democrats have been pushing, as you can see, Public Education Reinvestment Act shifts more money into moving towards smaller class sizes, something that's known to work, and shifting away from the voucher program, which is private dollars or public dollars becoming private without the same levels of accountability. So that's a bill that we introduced. These are all introduced, so these did not pass, not to get your hopes up. Healthy school meals is one that expands free breakfast and lunch. As we all know from personal experience, when you have a good breakfast, when you have a good lunch, you end up performing better in life. And I definitely tell that to my kids. So this is something that the federal government was able to come through in, but this program is looking to possibly sunset. So this is a bill that we introduced. Sorry if I'm blocking your view. That would make sure that every child has access to this, and despite income. And most of them in our area already fit this, but there are some places, particularly Waukesha, that hits the news sometimes, where they say, "Oh, we're gonna block this," so that it's only kids that are of a certain income level. What that does is it stigmatizes those kids when they're coming through with the cards, and it also means that they're subject to having student debt, which can actually bar them from advancing to the next grade level. And those dollar amounts are usually pretty low. It's usually less than $100, but it's enough for a family where that means difference between paying it or not. They don't have the ability to pay it. So that's something that I've been advancing and working with folks in the Assembly. Of course, Representative Nikki, the co-sponsor of that too. And then the other one is the package of bills that I put out, and Representative Sinek is a co-sponsor of all of them. 8 bills under the bold idea that teaching is actually a profession, and not something that is just where you're a babysitter. So unfortunately, we've been moving in the opposite direction. I don't know if we have complete. No, I don't have a slide that goes into it. So I can talk about each of those bills if you'd like, but basically right now we're actually going in the opposite direction, where literally a bill that was just signed by the governor says that if you are enrolled to be a teacher, if you are going to be even in your freshman year of college, then you are qualified to be a substitute teacher at that point, without any classroom experience, without any formal education, because the need is so great. The need is so great because the pay has not gone up. There is not a predictable pay schedule. There is not predictable benefits. And a whole host of other problems. And the profession has been disparaged widely for the last decade. So the bills, instead of looking back, we're looking forward. This would guarantee a base level of starting pay for every teacher that would actually match the pay of legislators. I think it's pretty appropriate. It'd also give a predictable pay schedule, especially based off of number of years that a person is a teacher. It would also give a predictable pay schedule for when you have an advanced degree. Right now, that is not necessarily rewarded. You can say, good, you got a graduate level education, you advanced yourself as a teacher, thanks.
Thanks, but yeah.
Yeah, good, we appreciate it. We sure agree. A pat on the back, we appreciate it. Predictable number of days off, and a whole host of other things around it. One of the big ones in trying to recruit people to the profession, if this is something where, you're not a teacher, don't have teachers in your family, you might not think of that as big of a deal, but it does end up affecting everybody. So for example, even just trying to get people into the profession, there is actually a thing right now, which I still find wild to believe, that if you want to become a teacher and you're enrolled in education, the last semester you have to go into a classroom, you have to do in-classroom learning, where you're essentially the teacher for that semester. During that time, you pay to be in the classroom. You are not paid for the time you are in the classroom, and you're supposed to forego other employment. So think of any other profession where that is something that we would accept, right? Where it's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to learn this job, or I'm going to start on this job, and they say, great, you're going to spend 5 months doing the job, and you can't work anywhere else, and by the way, you have to pay us to do it. And then we're wondering why we have a problem trying to recruit teachers. And by the way, starting pay in Wisconsin for teachers is around $34,000 average. So even if the amount of debt that's associated with coming up with a degree is about double that. So that tries to help solve it. So that's something that was pretty popular, but unfortunately has not moved forward yet. Unfortunately, speaking of that, we've been moving in the opposite direction of some of the attacks on education. These are some of the bigger bills that came through. Yeah. So yeah, there was one that called for the breakup of Milwaukee Public Schools, which would not allocate a single extra dollar. It would just break it into smaller pieces and hyper-segregate an already segregated community. All of these were vetoed, by the way. Expanding the voucher program for all parents without income caps. And just to give you an idea of what that means, it would cost us $577 million. And there is a piece of rhetoric that says, this is about providing choice, new choices for parents. The reality is, the last time we did an expansion, a big expansion, was 8 years ago. And what it found was 77% of the students who were getting the vouchers were already enrolled in that school. So it was actually just providing a subsidy. It wasn't providing any new choice. It was just saying, we're just going to pay for that person's private education. So eliminating the income caps would do the exact same thing. It would just mean every kid who's in a private school, the parents would get a huge subsidy for that. So, and at the same time, that takes money away from our public schools. Because I don't know about you, but we have a finite amount of money that we are spending. So the other, another one that kind of got swept under the rugs is AB 963, which could be shorthanded as the Book Burners Bill of Rights. It basically allows for anything that is taught in a school, you have to find out beforehand, and if that changes beforehand, you as a parent could sue the school if they change the curriculum. So for example, there was a tragic shooting, again, that happened in Texas. I don't know if you saw the news. 14 elementary students, were killed. And one teacher, right. And so if the next day some kids came in and they asked a question and said, hey, can we talk about this? The teacher would have to say no, because the school district could be sued because it is not listed as part of the curriculum. That's what this would do. Or if something else happens in the community, and the teacher and the kids want to talk about it, it's not listed as part of the curriculum. That school, a kid could go home and say to the parents, hey, we talked about this thing that happened in the news yesterday. And the parent could say, oh, that's interesting. I can now sue the school district for $10,000. So these are the things. And by the way, if there's things that are read or topics that are covered that their parent doesn't like, they have the ability to say, okay, I want them to taught this and not this and not this. And so thinking about that for a classroom of 30, 35 kids, where the teacher is supposed to say, okay, these are the things that I'm supposed to teach these kids, these kids, these kids. You'd have to rotate them out of the things that are acceptable and not acceptable on a daily basis. So that's what that bill would do, and it's not very well thought out for anybody who understands what's going on with it. It was widely opposed, but unfortunately it passed that party line. Governor Evers vetoed that. So
I'm sorry. So
yes.
You're saying that at the beginning of the school year, whatever,
Yep.
there is a set curriculum, and nobody can deviate from that set
Correct.
curriculum.
Yeah. If they do, they have to give advance notification to the parents. They're subject to a lawsuit.
But that was vetoed.
It was vetoed. Yeah.
That is
So
not
that
law.
So that was shut down. Yes.
So basically, when the kids should be learning to read and write, they're going to be learning other things.
Well, I mean, there's lots of things that are taught in schools.
Oh,
Yes.
well, there's a lot of things that shouldn't be taught in schools. That's what I'm just trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I'm pretty sure every school district puts their curriculum out on their websites. It's open to the public to see.
Yeah. And these are things, just to be clear, that are decided by the school board, and they're decided by the school administration, and they're decided by the classroom level.
Okay.
And what this would do is say, anytime a parent disagrees with it, instead of going through the normal democratic process of talking to your school board, of talking to your administration, talking to the teacher, you could say, well, I'm just going to sue you.
Oh, that's crazy.
Right.
And
So
you
it's-
And at the school level, there's usually
Christine,
parents on those
you
committees.
just said that the school districts put the curriculum out there ahead of time?
that was a law that passed, yeah, so they have to put their curriculum out.
Even for the laws passed, a lot of school
Is
districts
that a law or
already
is
had
that
their
just a
curriculum out.
practice?
It's a law now. Yeah, that the curriculum has to be out there in advance. Now, what is not, and what one of the things that they had pushed for was individual teaching materials, that all of it had to be put online in advance. That is not the law. That was something that they were pushing for. So Booch would have, and there was.
But it's good that it's out there in advance, because that is informative to parents.
Right.
It is, exactly. And for public schools, they have to supply that on request anyway, so a lot of them do it already. Again, just as a contrast, private schools, not only do they not publish it, they don't have to give it to you even if you ask. Even if your student, even if a school district, even if a private school is getting 100% of its dollars from voucher schools, they never have to let you in, they never have to let you know the curriculum, they never have to even tell you what it means to qualify for graduation.
But that's a parental choice. I mean, they're going there because they chose that.
For sure, but it's
They
also
can
our
go
tax.
somewhere else if they don't like that.
For sure, but it's also our tax dollars, and so the idea that like, we're going to have this standard for the public, but then this one that's also receiving 100% of their funds from the public
Doesn't have to.
doesn't have to do any of that at all. It's kind of silly. So this idea that they call it the Parental Bill of Rights, and actually in the committee I said, does this apply to public and private? And the bill's author said, oh, it's all of them, all of the kids. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to have a Bill of Rights for all the kids, regardless of where they go to school. And then they said, should this apply to everybody? I said, yes, absolutely. And I said, okay, great, because I have an amendment, because your bill doesn't do that. Your bill just does it for private, or just for public kids.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, then no, we're not taking your amendment. This is just, these rights only apply to parents who are in public schools. But the private schools, they can teach whatever they want. You know, they can teach the Earth is 4,000 years old, that evolution is not real, that whatever.
Holocaust never happened.
Right. Right. But the Holocaust they have to teach because we passed the law, thankfully.
Yeah, that's
It was 2 years ago. 2 years ago they finally changed that. But yeah, that's how it's unfortunately set up. So yes.
So if not for the governor's vetoing this AB 963, would it have been
Yes.
sent?
Yes. This would have passed into law. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can't fathom that.
Yeah.
And I worked in Carrollton Elementary School. Like
Oh, sure.
really visited.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm familiar with how much parents think, how much say-so some parents think they have, and I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Thank
And
God.
And to be honest, and like the people who came and testified for this, there's actually 3 people who came and showed up who were running for school board, who had run in the past, and they had lost. Some of them were running at the same time, were running and lost. And so this is a fringe, and these are in more conservative areas. So this is something that is a very small minority of folks who want to micro-scrutinize what's taught in our classrooms and have some heightened idea of this. And this is why it's called the Book Burners Bill of Rights, because it would be about banning specific books and specific things out of classrooms. So, yeah, luckily it was vetoed, but this is something where I think we assume, like, well, of course this would never pass, this would never happen, but the reality is this is being pushed out there.
I think this was a result of the critical race theory problem.
This is
Yeah.
when you say critical race theory problem, it's completely fabricated. There's zero. I put $100. If anyone would like to earn $100, I put $100 out there for anybody that can show me critical race theory is taught in any public school, any elementary
Call it whatever you
school
want, but it's out there.
in the state of Wisconsin, and they'll say, oh yeah, we're gonna get right to that.
It's out there.
Zero, not a single. Nope, because it's not. Because critical race.
Under other names, anti-racism, whatever you want to call it, it's out there.
Yeah, I mean, teaching about discrimination is important, right? It's important to be empathetic to our neighbors,
Yeah.
but calling it critical race theory, that's the same as saying, well, we're teaching rocket science because we had an experiment with, baking soda and vinegar. We're teaching, it's not the same. It's not even close to the same. It's not even in the same ballpark. It's a completely different universe. Yeah.
Parents that are homeschooling, do they fall under the private?
Yeah. Yes. Any other questions on education? I'd be happy to talk about education the whole time if we wanted to, but we've got other things. So the next is about
PFAS.
PFAS. Well, polyfluoroalkalides and then perfluoroalkalides. Did you just add that word? My
Who can
staff
say
added
that?
word. I swear that wasn't on the slide. How do you say it? I know polyfluoroalkali, but what's the first one? Perfluoroalkali. Well, the bad news is it's in our water, whether we can pronounce it or not. So yeah, we have some familiarity even if we can't pronounce it. But PFAS are man-made chemicals. These are things they're called forever chemicals because they don't break down naturally. If there's blood experiments that are done, every single human alive on the planet has these in their blood system. And there are some that are within our water. So there was an effort to try and reduce what was allowable in groundwater. This is what all these slides are explaining, or the rest of the slide is explaining. Unfortunately, the Natural Resources Board limited it to 70 parts per trillion. The proposed amount was 20 parts per trillion. And so that's where we stand, which is unfortunate. There's also not that much that can be done with remediation on it. We had a number of bills that tried to move forward. So this is a huge problem. I think, what does that affect us here in Milwaukee? Here's where our numbers are at, so you can see. This is where we stand. Yeah. Okay. Campaign integrity. We can kind of skip. We'll skip for now. We proposed some bills that didn't pass. New district maps. These are things that folks I know we've gotten a lot of questions about these, of where our maps are. This is what the district looks like now. So for those that know, we're right there. So the 7th Senate district didn't change all of that much, although it grew a longer foot over this way, so it goes all the way out into Franklin.